This is just an example of an invoice import trait, and if done correctly should work dynamically across all VAT or GST based tax regimes. It should actually work for other tax regimes as well, but as US has sales and use tax that can be displayed slightly differently, we would recommend a slightly different invoice format for that country. The first thing is that you need to make sure your details are correct and that you are displaying your tax registration number. Don't put VAT, reg number for example, as this would be incorrect for GST. Also, tax registration number is easier to translate than VAT registration number because VAT is known as IVA or TVR, etc. in different countries. The tax number itself needs to be brought in dynamically based on the VAT regime used to calculate the actual tax rate and the registration number linked to the legal entity. Invoice date shown on this example, but check your tax department in case you need a tax date too. The tax date is stored against the invoice itself, so if needed, can be brought through. Without a tax date, the invoice date is considered the tax date anyway. The bill to is often incorrectly used as the invoice to address. It is important to realise that technically the bill to is who you are legally invoicing and may not be the actual place the invoice is sent to. One of the most common mistakes we see for service-based companies is that they do not use the ship to. The ship to is where the goods are shipped or where the service takes place. And with the growth in digital sales, it may be prudent to change the ship to place of service for service-only invoices. You may be able to identify service-only invoices from a transaction type, for example. The customer tax registration number is also very important. If you're selling from one EU country to another, then technically you cannot charge an intra-EU 0% tax rate unless there is proof that that particular customer is registered for VAT. This number should again be dynamically brought in based on the fact that the bill to location has a VAT registration number or GST registration number linked to it, and it should be the number that is linked to the site being used, and that should be the number that should be brought through. You may have a customer that has multiple sites and potentially multiple tax registration numbers, so it is important you bring through the correct value.
With a number of columns needed, such as description, quantity, unit price, or, although not shown here, discount, line number, etc., the invoice real estate is really important, especially if you have long descriptions, as a poorly designed invoice could cost your company more money in printed paper. The tax code is an excellent way of saving space, as you only need one letter per tax rate used. This is then linked to the tax summary box, which has the rate details needed. We also have a column for the tax amount, which is line by line, and then the rest of the tax related information is held in the summary. The way the tax description summary is intended to work is that it is dynamic. This means if I was to add another line where the tax rate is different, then we would see another line added as shown. However, adding more lines with the same tax rate does not add more lines in the tax summary. It just increases any total. This method means you can add as many different tax rates as you want, and the invoice will handle it without there being any space restrictions. The description is often linked with legal required wordings. So for any intra-EU sales or AR reverse charges, this is where you'll be able to hold the legally required information. Also, make sure the percentage field is separate, as this way the rate can change without needing to change the description. All of the information shown here is actually held against the tax rates used. The tax type should also be dynamic, as the word for VAT is different in other languages such as IVA, TVR, GST, etc. Oracle does not offer multi-language, but we do have a solution to handle this, so please contact us if you need more information.